I spent last year piecing together how every tease for the next Mass Effect could work, including how the new N7 is likely a Shepard AI, but I recently came across an even better Shepard theory that's quite frankly blown me away. This theory centers around a long-buried Gamble tweet, explains Peebee's unique markings, and has altered my thinking on how the Shepard AI will appear in the next game. And the best part is, I'm not just gonna cover this mind-blowing theory, I'm gonna first go over a very relevant and very popular theory that is the perfect launching point for Shepard's potential return. So, let's first dive into a theory that involves a very familiar face from the Citadel DLC, Shepard's clone. When I first covered Shepard's likely return in the next Mass Effect, two theories have consistently been mentioned in the comments more than any other. The first covers how Liara could be recovering a DNA sample of Shepard from Alkera in order to clone them. And the second covers how the new N7 could be the original clone we encountered in the Citadel DLC. Let's go over the DNA sample theory first, because I'm not sure it's plausible. First off, I'm not entirely sure why Liara would travel all the way to Alkera to recover Shepard's DNA sample when plenty of DNA samples already exist on the Normandy, and especially in Shepard's cabin. And second, when examining Liara's motivations, I can't see her trying to bring back Shepard as a clone after she basically declared the original clone wasn't Shepard in the Citadel DLC.
And you're just a pale imitation of the real thing.
So for the DNA sample theory, I'm not going to rule it out entirely because obviously anything's possible. I just think it's heavily unlikely at this point anyway. Now, the much more juicy theory that I think has some very solid legs to stand on is the second clone theory. At the end of the Citadel DLC, Shepard's clone fell from the Normandy, either due to Shepard's actions or by the clone's choice. We see them slam into a building, which in most cases would rule them out as dead, but we live in the Mass Effect universe, where people can come back from the dead after falling through a planet's atmosphere, so I'm very here for the they could be alive angle. So assuming the clone is alive, the theory I've seen is that they're the N7 walking around in the latest trailer tease, which honestly is a pretty solid guess, especially if we rework some of the tease interpretations from my own theory. In my current theory, there's 4 reasons that explain why I think the N7 is a Shepard AI. The first being the "what's a person" tweet made by Gamble about the new N7. My interpretation of this is that the N7 could be viewed as not a traditional human, which I then assumed meant it was an artificial intelligence. With the clone theory, this easily could mean that a clone isn't traditionally viewed as a person too. The second point in my theory centers around the N7 being Shepard, because of all the Sheparded and old friend references made during last year's N7 Day tease about the coat. I view this as meaning the AI has been given our previous Shepards data, so this is basically them in AI form. But in the clone theory, this could easily mean that the very stylish coat is being worn by none other than Shepard's clone. And finally, the trailer's evil music vibes right when we see the N7's face lends weight to the Shepard AI being evil. But technically, we already know about an evil Shepard from the Citadel DLC. The only 2 things that can't quite be explained by the clone theory are why the helmet looks like a brain that an AI's design might feature, and the random binary code that Gamble put in his N7 Day blog during the N7's reveal. But we'll get to how those teases can actually make sense with the clone theory as well in a little bit. The main takeaway for me with this theory is that it can definitely work with what I've examined so far. But what if I told you there's actually really solid evidence that takes this theory to the next level? When I was racking my 3 brain cells for the latest groundbreaking theory on the next Mass Effect, I got pinged with a theory from the Massively Affected Discord server that has just the evidence the clone theory needs. Huge thanks to Pathrider, Blazybones, and EweTubes for coming up with the ultimate Shepard fan theory that gives the clone theory even more juice. The heart of this theory centers around a sci-fi franchise that honestly wasn't even on my radar, but after looking into all the details, it undoubtedly has a chance of being major inspiration for the next Mass Effect, and especially the new N7. And that's because this sci-fi franchise is one of Gamble's absolute favorites, with that franchise being Blade Runner. A long-buried Gamble tweet from 2020 that I initially thought was nothing was the very first hint of how this sci-fi series could influence the next Mass Effect. In the tweet, Gamble mentions how he was inspired by Blade Runner 2049 to the point that he got the composer for that movie to make the iconic track for the next Mass Effect trailer. Not only that, but Peebee also has very similar markings to one of the characters in the original Blade Runner. So clearly, Blade Runner not only served as inspiration during Andromeda's development, it also inspired the biggest tease we've gotten so far with the Game Awards trailer. So with all this Blade Runner inspiration, the question has to be asked: is the new N7's design also inspired by one of Gamble's favorite sci-fis? I think the answer might be yes, especially after looking at the coat worn by Blade Runner 2049's protagonist, Officer K. That coat's high collar looks very similar to the new N7's collar, so the ongoing Blade Runner theory is looking even more promising. So because of this potential connection to Blade Runner, I took a serious look at what all this could mean about the identity of the N7, and especially what this means for Shepard's return. Before we get to that though, just a reminder that if you want to interact with myself and other Mass Effect fans, then you should join the Massively Affected server by becoming a member of my Patreon. Clearly, the server's got some exceptional theorists in there too, so pop on over to my Patreon link to join in on the theorizing shenanigans happening 24/7. Alright, on to the main point in this Blade Runner-inspired Shepard theory. The Blade Runner coat definitely matches the new N7's, but it also matches one other character from a very obscure piece of concept art for the original Mass Effect. That character, of course, being Shepard. In the BioWare 25 book, it lists this art as being inspiration for the eventual Saren throat grab that happened on Vermeer. But as for the theory we're currently discussing, it's important to note that Shepard's design was inspired by 80s sci-fis, which definitely would have included Blade Runner, released in 1982. In the original Blade Runner, Harrison Ford's character also rocked a high-collared coat, specifically because he played a detective. Ryan Gosling's character also plays a detective of sorts, which leads me to the Shepard Blade Runner theory's first main point. The new N7 could be Shepard playing one of their originally inspired roles in the next Mass Effect, that being a detective. But that's not the mind-blowing part that sent my 3 brain cells into overdrive. The mind-blowing part of this Blade Runner-inspired theory is the heart of what the Blade Runner franchise is all about, which are replicants. In Blade Runner, replicants are bioengineered humanoids that are physically indistinguishable from humans and possess superhuman strength and intelligence. As a side note, the main plot of Blade Runner is tracking down these replicants, hence why both Blade Runner stories feature detectives. As to the replicants being bioengineered humanoids, I believe that this is the key to unlocking who exactly the new N7 is, and also to bring points from the clone theory and the AI theory together to form the ultimate Shepard returns theory out there. What if, based on the inspiration of Blade Runner, this new N7 is actually a replicant-like version of Shepard? So they aren't just an AI, and they aren't just a clone. This could be a bioengineered robot that doesn't just have Shepard's data, but their resemblance too. So maybe this wacky helmet could actually be removed to reveal the face of Shepard. In order to make something bioengineered, Shepard's DNA would have to be used. So in a way, they would kind of be like Shepard's clone. And along with the other AI hints like the binary code, this bioengineered version of Shepard could easily be just like the replicants, who resemble humans but are very much androids. Along with the really evil choice of music, this could mean that this is an evil, bioengineered humanoid Shepard that may have a detective-like bounty hunter role in the next Mass Effect. To me, this makes a lot of sense, because it would be the next technological progression from both the trilogy and Andromeda. In Mass Effect 3, we had EDI, an AI who could walk and talk in a very human-like form, and Andromeda debuted the Ungarans, who were bioengineered organics created by the Jardaan. So the logical next step would be a mix of both AI and bioengineered organics, just like bioengineered humanoids iconic to the Blade Runner franchise. And we might have already seen the first version of these humanoids with the new N7. Even way back to the original Mass Effect team, Blade Runner was clearly a huge inspiration, being a major sci-fi series of its own. As for the next Mass Effect, Based on what I've seen, I think it easily has the potential to be one of the top sci-fi games out there. To see for yourself why I think the next Mass Effect has sci-fi blockbuster potential, watch this video next on all the Mass Effect 5 updates so far. See you there!